Hi everyone, this is Rabbi Tawil with this year's Seder, Pesah 2020. I'm here with my daughter, Tawil, and she's going to be my assistant. After all, the Seder is really all about the children and getting them to be the next link in the chain of our Mesorah, passing on our traditions from year to year. This year's circumstances for the Seder are very different. Many people will be conducting their Seders with limited guests, maybe just a husband and wife, and for many, it's the first time they will ever be performing and hosting a Seder. And so we've made this video with the goal and hopes that it will be able to guide you through all of the different processes, all of the different steps in order to make sure that you fulfill all of your mitzvot, in the words of our rabbis, with the utmost care and precision. We're going to begin by first talking about what you need in order to perform a Seder. Over here, we'll start with our wine and grape juice. We're going to be drinking 4 cups of wine throughout the Seder. The best thing to use for your wine is an alcoholic red wine, preferably non-mevushal, which means that it was not cooked. You could find that on the label. But if a person is worried that a non-Jew will come in contact with their non-mevushal grape juice or wine, it is appropriate to use a mevushal wine. However, for many people, drinking 4 cups of wine is very difficult, and therefore, according to Hacham Ovadiah Yosef Alav Shalom, grape juice is also sufficient to be drinking all 4 cups of wine. Turn your attention over here to the Seder plate, which has all of the ingredients we will need to conduct the Pesach Seder. Over here on my right, your left, you find the zroa, the shank bone. I'll refer you to the SCA Minhag of the Week video by Mr. Morris Arking as to how to perform, I should say, how to cook the shank bone. But for most people, the custom is to boil it. Beneath that, you have the charoset, a red paste or dip that's made from dates, nuts, wine, various sweet things, and everybody has their own recipe. We'll be using that to dip the maror. Speaking of which, in the middle, we have our romaine lettuce. This is our maror, which according to the Mishnah, romaine lettuce is the best thing to be used for that. Others use endive, or Ashkenazim famously use horseradish for that. Because we didn't have endive, I've also used romaine lettuce for the chazeret, which we'll be using in the sandwich later on in the Seder, but you could also use maror, endive for that as well. To the left, we have our celery that will be used for karpas, and we have our egg that is hard-boiled, goes in the top left corner. Of course, the star of the show underneath this is the matzah. 3 whole matzot, which we will talk more about when we get to the section of eating the matzah. The zroa and the egg are to commemorate the presence of 2 sacrifices, 2 korbanot that would usually be at the Seder. The zroa is to commemorate the korban Pesach, the Paschal sacrifice, which would normally be at the Seder. And the betzah, the egg, is to commemorate the korban hagigah, the festival korban that would be eaten at the Seder as well. Without a Bet HaMikdash, we just have these ingredients as remembrances, which we will eat later on in the Seder. We are now going to begin our Seder, which customarily begins with a singing of the simanim, the different stages of the Seder. Carol, you will sing it with me?
Yes.
Kadesh, Urchatz, Karpas, Yachatz, Maggid, Rachtzah, Matzah, Maror, Korech, Shulchan Orech, Tzafun, Barech, Hallel, Nirtzah. We're now going to begin with Kadesh. Kadesh is the recitation of Kiddush like we would do on Shabbat and on regular Yom Tov. However, there are a few customs and nuances to the Kiddush of the night of the Seder. The first is looking at the cup that we're going to use. How much wine does a person need to drink for each of the 4 cups of wine at the Seder? The halacha is that a person must drink 3 ounces of wine, the majority of it if you eat, in order to be able to fulfill their obligation. This is why choosing a glass like the one in front of me is so important. This glass holds about 5 ounces, and therefore if we drink the majority of this cup, will both be drinking rov kos as well as a revi'it, a 3-ounce measurement of wine. If you choose a glass that is too big, then you might not be able to drink the rov kos, the majority of the cup. So we want to have 2 things, 3 ounces as well as the majority of the cup. You want to wash and rinse and make sure the cup is clean before beginning Kiddush. And according to the Kabbalah, we wash and rinse the cup out each time before any of the 4 cups. Another very nice custom at the Seder is that somebody else pours your wine on your behalf as a symbol of freedom. So I'm going to ask my trusted assistant, Sarah Emuna, to please pour the cup of wine. Great job. We're now going to stand and recite the Kiddush of the night of the Seder. You could find the Kiddush at the beginning of the Haggadah. It'll say, Kiddush lelel Pesach keshehal behol, the Kiddush of the night of Pesach when it falls out on a weekday. I'm going to recite the entire Kiddush with the Berachot so that you know and you can hear and train yourself in saying the Kiddush. אלה מועדי אדוני מקראי קודש אשר תקראו אותם במועדם סברי מרנן ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם בורא פרי הגפן ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר בחר בנו מכל עם ורוממנו מכל לשון וקידשנו במצוותיו ותיתננו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה מועדים לשמחה חגים וזמנים לששון את יום חג המצות הזה, את יום טוב מקרא קודש הזה, זמן חילותנו באהבה מקרא קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים, כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ומועדי קודשך, בשמחה ובששון הנחלתנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, מקדש ישראל והזמנים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם, שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. At this point we sit and we drink the cup leaning to our left. As you noticed, whenever we drink any of the 4 cups, and we will point it out at other parts of the Seder, we always lean to the left. You must make sure to lean to the left, as leaning to the right does not constitute a proper version of leaning. Any of these things that are done without leaning would need to be repeated. So make sure that you're reminded before drinking the 4 cups and other areas of the Seder that require leaning to lean to the left when performing the action. We are now going to perform the second step of the Seder, Urchatz, where we will wash our hands in preparation for the dipping of the celery in the salt water. When we wash our hands, we do so exactly as we would for bread, except that no beracha is recited. Filling up with our right hand, we transition to the left. No beracha is recited, and it is appropriate to try and not speak until we get to Karpas. We're now at the 3rd stage, Karpas. During Karpas, we're going to take our celery, but we're not going to use the entire stalk of celery. We do not want to have more than a kazayit, because then we may have to say beracha aharona, and we'll have problems fulfilling the borei pri ha'adama of the Maror later in the Seder. What we're going to do is take about 1/3 of that same celery stalk, which is less than a kazayit, and we're going to dip it into the salt water. We are going to eat the celery not leaning in an upright position, and beforehand we're going to make the beracha of borei pri ha'adama. Carol Emma, why do we dip it into the salt water?
To remember the tears that the Jews had.
Excellent. Beautiful. One person can recite the beracha on behalf of everybody, or each person can recite their own borei pri ha'adama. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri ha'adama.
Amen.
We're now at the 4th stage of the Seder, Yachatz. During Yachatz, we're going to take the 3 matzot, and we're going to break the middle matzah into 2 pieces, one smaller and one bigger. The reason why we do this is because when we get to motzi matzah, we're going to eat some big whole pieces and other broken pieces like a poor man. That's why the matzah is called lechem oni. Many people have different customs how to break the matzah. Some break it into the shape of a Vav and a Yud. Others break it into the shape of a Daled. Everybody could do according to their own custom. The key is to have one big piece and one smaller piece. The bigger piece is going to be put into the Afikomen bag and to be used for Afikomen and Mish'arotam. The smaller piece gets tucked back in between the two bigger matzot and set aside for later in the Seder. At this point, there is a custom to recite the Mish'arotam prayer by passing around the Afikomen and each person reenacting themselves leaving Egypt. As we say later on, it's as if a person is leaving Egypt himself. Sarah Emunah is going to lead us in the Mish'arotam, taking the matzah in her right hand over her left shoulder, and she's going to recite Mish'arotam, at which point it's customary to ask and answer certain questions.
Mish'arotam, serot v'sinotam al shechmanu b'nei Yisrael asur kiba Moshe
Mewen jeyeh,
b'Mitzrayim
ufen laicha,
Yerushalayim
yishizu atak.
Matzah Maror.
Everybody can then pass around this Afikomen bag and perform the same ritual over. At the end, it is customary that a child takes the Afikomen and hides it for later on in the Seder. Just take a bit. We're now at the fifth section of the Seder, the section of Maggid. Here we're going to read the Haggadah and tell over the story of the Exodus from Egypt, Yetziat Mitzrayim. This fulfills the first biblical mitzvah of the night, to tell over the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. We're not going to read through the whole Haggadah, but the Haggadah begins with the paragraph Kehalach Ma'aniyah, and we will mention each of the beginnings of the paragraphs that you should be reading as you're going through. Of course, comprehension and saying Divrei Torah is encouraged at the Seder. The paragraph begins Kehalach Ma'aniyah. The second paragraph is noteworthy, that is the Manishtana, the 4 questions. Here it's customary, if you have children at your Seder, for them to ask the 4 questions. Before asking the 4 questions, it is customary to remove the Seder plate from the table. This is there to prompt the children to ask the questions.
Manishana halayla ze ikol Hallel shelechol Hallel anu ochlim chametz umatzah halayla ze hulo matzah. At this point, the Seder plate is returned back to its spot, and we will continue with the reading of the Haggadah. It's important to note that your glass should be full, the second cup should be poured before reading the Haggadah. The paragraphs then go, Avadim hayinu lefaro b'Mitzrayim, Ma'aseh b'Rabbi Eliezer b'Rabbi Yehoshua, Amar Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Then the 4 sons, Baruch HaMakom Baruch Hu, Hacham Mahu Omer, Rasha' Mahu Omer, Tam Mahu Omer, V'she'eno Yodea Lish'al. Then we get to the negative parts of the Haggadah. Mitechila ovdei avodah zara hayu avotenu. Our forefathers were idol worshippers. Vayikach et avichem et Avraham. Baruch shomer haftachato liYisrael. Hashem keeps His promise. We then reach the paragraph of V'hi she'amda. Here it is customary when reciting V'hi she'amda to raise the second cup and to recite the entire paragraph while having the second cup raised. We're not going to drink the cup. At the end of the paragraph, you just place the cup back down. The reason is that the second cup represents the hitzalti, that Hashem saved us. And in this paragraph we say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu matzilenu miyadam, Hashem saves us from our enemies. We then continue with the Pisukim that we are going to be Doresh, the 4 verses from the Parashat Bikurim, the first fruits that are then expounded upon. Tse ulmad, vayedid Mitzrayma, bimte me'at, vahisham legoy gadol, varav, ויראו אותנו המצרים, ויענונו, ויתנו עלינו עבודה קשה, ונצעק אל אדוני אלוהי אבותינו, וישמע אדוני את קולנו, וירא את עוניינו, ואת עמלנו, ואת לחצנו. ויוציאנו אדוני ממצרים, ועברתי בארץ מצרים, ביד חזקה, ובזרוע נטויה, ובמורא גדול, ובאותות ובמופתים. At this point you reach the paragraph right before the 10 makot.
it is customary to bring a pot and to spill out grape juice or wine, whatever's in your cup, when reciting the makot, the plagues that were inflicted upon the Egyptians. This is so that we don't feel joy at the fall of our enemy. I'm going to read these paragraphs and show you how to do the spilling of the wine. ובמופתים זה הדם כמו שנאמר ונתתי מופתים בשמיים ובארץ דם ואש וכמרות עשן דבר אחר ביד חזקה שתיים ובזרוע נטויה שתיים ובמור הגדול שתיים ובאותות שתיים ובמופתים שתיים אלו 10 מכות שהביא הקדוש ברוך הוא על המצרים במצרים דם, צפרדע, קינים, ערוב, תבר, שחין, ברד, הרבה, חושך, מכת בכורות. רבי יהודה היה נותן בהם סימנים, דצח, עדש, באחיו. At this point, the grape juice can be taken in and poured down the sink. The cup is refilled and we continue reading the Haggadah, past the sections of Dayenu, Alahat, Kama v'Kama. Then we come to the section of Pesach, Matzah, Maror. Rabban Gamliel haya omer, Kol mi shelo amar shelosha devarim elu b'Pesach, lo yatsa yideh chovato ve'elohen, Pesach, Matzah, Maror. When saying Matzah and Maror, it's appropriate to point to the Matzah and Maror. But when we say Pesach, we do not point to the Zroa as it is not Korban Pesach. We will then recite the 3 paragraphs explaining those 3 major things. Pesach shayu avotenu ochlim, Matzah zo she'anu ochlim al shuma, Maror ze she'anu ochlim al shuma. We then come to the end of the Haggadah where we recite portions of the Hallel. The first half of the Hallel is recited. Then at the very end, we recite a beracha and drink the second cup of wine while leaning. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher ga'alanu v'ga'al et avotenu mimitzrayim, v'higi'anu halayla hazeh le'echol bo matzah umaror, ken Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu, הגיענו למועדים ולרגלים אחרים הבאים לקראתנו לשלום, שמחים בבניין עירך, וששים בעבודתך, ונאכל שם מן הזבחים ומן הפסחים, אשר יגיע דמם על כיבוש בחך לרצון, ונודה לך שיר חדש על גאולתנו ועל פדות נפשנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל. We're back in the kitchen to perform Rachtzah, where we're going to wash our hands again in preparation for the eating of matzah, just like we would for eating bread. This time we're going to make a beracha. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו על נטילת ידיים. We've now reached Motzi Matzah, where we'll perform the second biblical commandment of the night, and that is to eat the matzah. The matzah is eaten with just a little bit of salt and no other condiments. We do not dip the matzah into charoset or anything else in order that we should taste the flavor of the matzah. The matzah is eaten leaning to the left. How much matzah do we need to eat? This is a big question, and depending on what your matzah is that you're using, it's going to fluctuate. And there are also some stringencies and some base minimum requirements to fulfill. The basic mitzvah is to eat a kazayit, 1 ounce of matzah, which is approximately between 18 and 27 grams of matzah. However, there are many who are strict to eat 2 kezetot, 2 ounces of matzah, which will be somewhere between 36 and 54 ounces of matzah. The higher you go, the more strict the person is being. It is appropriate for the leader of the Seder to eat 2 kezetot, 1 kezayit from the whole matzah, and 1 kezayit from the broken piece of matzah. In addition, anybody around the Seder who wishes to eat 2 kezetot, approximately 54 grams, should also do so and is praiseworthy in doing so. How much is 54 grams or 36 grams? Each of these round matzah shemura boards is approximately 60 grams, which means that if you're eating the higher side, 2 ounces, 54 grams, you're eating approximately a whole one of these shemura matzahs. However, if a person feels that that's a little bit too much for them to consume and they want to do 2 kezetot, they could do 36 grams, which is approximately 2/3. If you're only having 1 kezayit, you could do a half, which is about 27 grams, or if you're really having difficulty eating the matzah, you could do 18 grams, which is 1/3. So there's different variations depending on the 18 or 27 gram matzah, and whether you're eating 1 kezayit of matzah or 2 kezetot. Each person should do what they're able to fulfill. At this point, the leader of the Seder picks up all 3 matzot, the 2 whole ones and the broken one, all together, and is going to recite the beracha of hamotzi lechem min haaretz. You have the 2 whole ones for lechem mishneh, like we always do on Shabbat and on holidays, and the broken piece represents the lechem oni, the poor man's bread. You'll notice that after I recite the first beracha, hamotzi lechem min haaretz, I will drop the bottom big matzah and only make al achilat matzah, the second beracha, on the big piece and the small piece together, dip it in the salt, and then eat it leaning to the left. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat matzah.
Amen.
We're now moving on to Maror. The eating of Maror on the night of the Seder is a rabbinical commandment because the Torah only mentions eating Maror together with the Korban Pesah, the Paschal sacrifice, which we don't have. The rabbis instituted that we continue to eat Maror separately in order to remember that Maror was once eaten with the Pesach sacrifice. How much Maror must a person eat and what could be used? The best thing to use for Maror is the romaine lettuce. Approximately 2 big pieces of romaine lettuce, as I have in front of me, is about 27 grams, a kazayit, 1 ounce of romaine lettuce. If you're using endive, it's approximately 4 or 5 pieces of endive. You can weigh and should weigh it out from before to get 27 grams. Maror is going to be dipped into the charoset. However, we don't slather the maror in the charoset. It's just a light dip and a little bit of a shake off to have a little bit of the flavor of the charoset on the maror. Because the maror represents bitterness, we do not lean when we eat the maror. We recite the beracha al achilat maror. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat maror. The matzah that I have in front of me is what we call matzah shemura. Matzah shemura means that the wheat used to produce the flour to make the matzah was watched and guarded to make sure that it didn't come in contact with any water already from the time of kitzirah, from the time of the harvesting. This is a very special kind of matzah, and it's ideal that a person try to get their hands on this kind of matzah for the night of the Seder. However, this kind of matzah is sometimes difficult, especially under these circumstances, to get them. In addition to being matzah shemura, this is also matzah that is made l'shem matzat mitzvah. The matzah is made for the purposes of the performance of the mitzvah. That is necessary for the night of the Seder. You must have a matzah that is made for the purposes of the mitzvah. If you don't have matzah shemura, however, like this, which is handmade, a person can use b'diavad the matzah that is made in the boxes, the non-egg strites or manishevet square matzah, which is assured that is made also l'shem matzat mitzvah. It's made for the purposes of the mitzvah, but it is machine made. If one cannot get their hands on the handmade matzah shemura l'shem matzat mitzvah, it is acceptable to use the machine made strites or manishevitz non-egg matzah for the purposes of the Seder. You must then weigh it out to see how much you need, 27 grams or 18 grams for each kazayit, in order to be able to know how much you need to eat to fulfill your obligation. At this point, we've reached Korech. Korech is the sandwich. We're going to take 1 kazayit, 1 ounce of the matzah, somewhere between 18 and 27 grams, approximately a half to a third of a round matzah, and we're going to break it in 2 and place maror, the romaine lettuce or the endive, whatever you have in the middle. together with charoset. And that could be as much as a person wants in the sandwich. And we cover it with the other matzah. We're going to eat the korech leaning to the left. And before we do that, we're going to say a declaration. We're going to make a statement that this korech is to recall what was done in the times of the Beit HaMikdash when they took the paschal sacrifice, the Korban Pesach meat, placed it in between the matzah, maror, and charoset, and had them all together to fulfill all the obligations. Zecher למקדש, כהלל הזקן, שהיה קורחן ואוכלן בבת אחת, לקיים מה שנאמר, על מצות ומרורים יאכלוהו. At this point, it is customary to eat the zroa, the shank bone, and the betzah, the egg. First, we take the shank bone and we say, Zecher lekorban Pesach, a remembrance to the paschal sacrifice, and it is eaten. One can or cannot lean when doing so. After that, we salt the egg and we recite upon the egg, Zecher lekorban Hagiga, a remembrance to the festive sacrifice that was eaten on the night of the Seder. At this point, we move into Shulchan Orech. Shulchan Orech is the festive meal that is eaten on behalf of the holiday. After Shulchan Orech is completed and one has eaten all their food and dessert, we move to Tzafun. Tzafun, meaning hidden, is when we bring out the hidden Afikomen to be able to eat at the end of the Seder. The Afikomen is a remembrance to the Korban Pesach as well, which was eaten at the end of the meal, al hasova, when a person was already full. So you can find that matzah bag, take out the afikomen. Once again, using only salt, you're going to eat the afikomen leaning to the left. Here too, you must eat another ounce, another kazayit, somewhere between 18 and 27 grams of matzah. In total, a person has to eat a minimum of 3 ounces, 3 kezetot of matzah, one for motzi matzah, one for korech, and one for tzafun. As we already noted, there are many people who like to eat a little bit more for motzi matzah, and some people who even eat 2 ounces for tzafun as well. So a minimum of 3 ounces, a maximum of 5 ounces, and the ounces fluctuate between 18 and 27 grams. Before eating the afikomen, we say, Zecher lekorban Pesach hane'echal al hasova, a remembrance to the Korban Pesach, which was eaten while satiated, and one eats it leaning to the left. At this point, we reached Barech. Barech, we're going to recite Birkat HaMazon over the 3rd cup of wine. Another member of the Seder will pour the 3rd cup of wine, and if you have 3 men at the Seder, or at least 2 bar mitzvah men and 1 boy above the age of 7 or 8 years old, still awake and able to recite Birkat HaMazon, you could perform zimun like a regular Shabbat or holiday. Birkat HaMazon is then recited. Take care to include Ya'aleh v'yavo and Yom Chag HaMatzot Hazeh into your Birkat HaMazon. If one forgets to say Ya'aleh v'yavo, the entire Birkat HaMazon must be repeated. At the end of the Birkat HaMazon, there is the Kos Yeshuot Esa and the recitation of Borei Pri HaGefen over the 3rd cup of wine. Kos Yeshuot Esa b'Shem Adonai Ekra Savrei Maranan Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Borei Pri HaGefen. After drinking the 3rd cup of wine, the 4th cup of wine is then poured, and we will recite Hallel, the joyous and festive prayers, over the 4th cup of wine. The Hallel begins with the phrase Shefoch Hamatecha El Hagoyim, and then incorporates many of the paragraphs that were familiar from Hallel in the Tefillah. There's Min HaMetzar Karatiya, which many people have the custom of singing, and then after that, the festive prayer of Nishmat Kol Hai is recited with tunes, fervor, and gusto. At the end of the Hallel, the beracha of Yehalelucha is recited, and the 4th cup of wine is drank leaning to the left. Yehalelucha Adonai Eloheinu kol ma'asecha v'chasidecha v'tzadikim oseh retzonecha ve'amecha v'Yisrael kulam b'rina yodu v'yivarechu v'yishabbechu v'yifaru et shem kevodecha ki lecha tov lehodot v'shimcha na'im lezamer u'me'olam ve'ad olam ata'el baruch atah Adonai מלך מהולל בתשבחות, אמן. After drinking the fourth cup of wine, one must recite the after beracha on wine, al hagefen, the al piri hagefen. We then reach the last of the simanim, Nirtzah. Nirtzah is a festive, joyous singing for all the members around the table. There are many famous songs, Had Gadya, Ehad Mi Yodeya, many great pizmonim that are present in the Haggadah. Carol and I will sing one short song for you to end off the Seder. Rahum ata ki ga'alta lanu mimishma. Rahum ata ki ga'alta lanu mimishma. That's the end of the Seder. I want to thank you for tuning in. I'd like to thank my assistant Sarai Muna and my dear wife for filming and helping with the production of Matzah Seder 2020. I want to wish everybody a Chag Kasher v'Sameach, a joyous and festive Pesah. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of the rabbis, myself, and any of the SCA affiliates. They'll all be there to answer your questions. I hope you have a healthy and a safe Chag Pesach. Tizku l'shanim rabot.